Welcome everybody, right, to our first webinar of the Montana University System. We're so glad to have you today, and you're going to be hearing from the leadership from our 3 Montana institutions in the National Sloan Program, and you'll hear from 2 alumni and 1 scholar. So I should introduce myself. I'm Barbara Komlush. I'm the program administrator for the Montana University System Sloan Program. So without further ado, we'll get started. And here's a little outline for today. And as I said, you're going to be hearing from the leadership at the 3 institutions. First from Dr. Aaron Thomas, who's at University of Montana, and he will talk about the National Sloan Program as well as the program at U of M. Then you'll hear from Dr. Beverly Hartline, who's at Montana Technological University, or Montana Tech. And then you'll hear from Dr. Craig Ogilvie, who's the Dean of the Graduate School at Montana State, and Dr. Sweeney Winchief, who's the Sloan PI. And then in part, we'll have some times for questions. And if you'll see up there, you could go ahead and pop your questions into the chat, and then we'll have time for questions after part 1. And part 2, we'll have our graduate journey presented by Dr. Ranalda, Tsosie, Shanara, Spang-Gion, and Mariah Romero. And then we'll have time after each one for 1 or 2 questions, and then we'll have a final Q&A session. So, and I will also be posting in the chat, and also on the last slide, there'll be a link for kind of a feedback form for you to connect with us and be able to connect with different people at the Montana institutions, and we could help you figure out maybe what graduate program is the best for you. Without further ado, we'll hand it over to Aaron Thomas.
Well, and welcome everyone. Glad that you were able to be on this webinar at this time. Wanted to thank Barbara for putting this together. I'm imagining we'll have a series of these, looking to advertise Sloan, but also hear from some of our alumni and graduates that have been part of this program. So a quick overview of the Sloan Indigenous Graduate Program. This is a partnership between 9 schools. And this partnership has been going on for about 7-8 years or so. So instead of having separate schools doing separate things, we all came together to form a partnership and really just trying to affect change with our Native graduate students in STEM, not individually, not in silos, but as a partner, as a group of institutions. And those institutions, if I can get them all together, are the 3 Montana institutions: University of Montana, Montana Tech, and Montana State. We also have in Arizona, the University of Arizona. In Alaska, University of Alaska, both the Fairbanks and the Anchorage campus. We also have Purdue University, SUNY in Syracuse, and also UNC Asheville. So those are the institutions that are part of the national program. And as a national program, we do try to do things together as a group. The biggest event that we try to do is to gather together at the ACES National Conference. This year, because we were not able to do that in person, we did that virtually. And one of the best parts I enjoy about that conference is when we come together and just have conversations and see what each person is doing and what other natives are doing on other campuses and the research and the activities. And it's just an exciting time for us all to be together. So we enjoy being as a group. I also enjoy the Montana, the 3 campuses of Montana, and how we come together usually in the spring. Hopefully we'll be able to do that again this year. We usually try to do that around some sort of hot spring somewhere. So a time to relax, but also a time to learn and have workshops and to visit with each other and to form community between our Native students on each of the campuses. I've enjoyed each of these interactions and learning what all of our students have been doing on each of the campuses and the strong work and where they're going afterwards. And it's just exciting what our students have been doing. So if I was just to do a quick overview of what's happening at the University of Montana. So I have myself, I'm the PI for Principal Investigator for Montana Sloan. We also have Blakely Brown, who's also shown here, is also has been a part of Sloan for a number of years. Some of our programs of note is our wildlife biology program, probably our shining star. Apparently, most recently, it has been viewed as the #1 wildlife biology program in the country. So that's exciting. We also have strong programs in forestry and conservation. We have the individualized integrated PhD program, which actually Ranalda, who we'll be talking later, was a part of, where you get to put together your own PhD program. We also have strong programs in the natural sciences. And we also have somewhat a unique program through the anthropology department in archaeology. So we've had some students that are part of archaeology and also part of Sloan as well. Some of the highlights on our campus, we have the Payne Family Native American Center, a beautiful building that's used for a variety of activities for our Native students. The Spring Powwow, Kiayo, what it is called, and it's a series of the dances, events that surround the powwow. There's a lot of things going on during that week. So we're pleased to host the Spring Powwow, and again, we're all hoping this will happen again in the spring. In Missoula, we have the Urban Indian Health Institute. So especially those that are used to going to Indian Health Services, we don't necessarily have one in Missoula, but we do have the Urban Indian Health Institute. They've also are heavily involved in the community with students and with K through 12 as well. And if you love the outdoors, as with any of our Montana campuses, we have multiple outdoor opportunities, from hiking to fishing to biking to backpacking, whatever those may be. And so if you're worried about social distancing, you only have to go a few miles and you'll be far away from everyone. And it's just a great opportunity just to be alone and be by yourself. Specific on our campus, we do have monthly meetings with our students. We've been hosting those on Zoom right now, but typically those center around some sort of a meal. We have strong peer graduate support. I really do feel that our Native graduate students support each other quite well through various non-sanctioned, I shouldn't say sanctioned, non-planned events, meaning that they're spontaneous birthday parties to go to or other things that are happening or centers around sports or those sort of things. So really appreciate our students looking at each other and getting together around these activities. I really appreciate the connections with the other Montana campuses. Barbara's done an excellent job with helping with events on the 3 campuses. You also hear from Bev Hartline, who's also been integral in helping out with these campus events as well, along with Sweeney and Craig. Appreciate the student gatherings that we have. And right now we have 12 current Sloan students on our campus, which is exciting. This year, and the other 2 campuses will attest to this as well, we've had a record number of Sloan students that have entered into our programs. So excited about that. So we're really happy to be able to welcome the new students on our campus. So I'm the contact here. Again, Aaron Thomas, and my email is shown. So appreciate y'all listening, and then we'll move east.
Great, thank you, Aaron. And we'll move east to Butte for Dr. Beverly Hartline.
Thank you so much, and it's really a pleasure to meet all of you. As they said, I'm Beverly Hartline. I'm the Vice Chancellor for Research and the Dean of the Graduate School at Montana Tech. My own degree is in PhD in geophysics. You can see me with this horse whose name, for some strange reason, is Smokey, I think. And my colleague, Victoria Pagan. Victoria, please say hello, if you can.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm extremely honored to be here and extremely honored to be a part of the Montana University System Sloan program here at Montana Tech.
So, we are a very friendly, and compared to essentially all of the other campuses, a much smaller one. We have about 2,500 students at Montana Tech entirely, and about 10% of them are graduate students. We are basically very focused, our entire campus. We started out as the School of Mines in Montana, and our entire campus, essentially all of our degree programs are STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math related programs. So essentially all of our graduate programs are open to Sloan students. We have remarkably good equipment considering we are a small campus. We also have the Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology located on our campus, and many of our students, both Sloan students and others, do projects funded by and in collaboration with the Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology. That is, if they're interested in environmental, geological, and natural resources types of projects. What happened? Anyway, our faculty and students pride themselves on solving problems, making a positive difference, having really wonderful and close relationships between and among the students and the faculty. And that's one thing about Montana Tech. We're this great community. Another thing to say is that Butte is a very low, it's a very low cost of living community. And so whereas the stipends and the scholarships, they're better than many students get, in Butte, you can actually live quite comfortably on that amount. Our distinctive programs are 2 PhD programs, one in material science, the other in earth science and engineering. And we have our masters, we have several of them across the engineering and fields, but the ones that are particularly popular with our Sloan students are ecological restoration, environmental engineering, geosciences, industrial hygiene, and many other natural resources engineering field. Plus, we have an interdisciplinary master's program, and we actually will participate in the University of Montana's interdisciplinary PhD program. So if you had faculty at Montana Tech who you really wanted to work with and an interdisciplinary PhD, then that could be done under the official University of Montana, that PhD program that Erin mentioned. And in our interdisciplinary master's program, you basically create your own, and you'll be hearing from Shani, who did that a couple of years ago between hydrogeology and technical communication / policy areas. Butte, like Missoula, Butte has an urban Indian health service. It's called, in our place, it's called North American Indian Alliance. They sponsor a powwow every year, and Montana Tech is and can be part of that. We'll participate there. We'll interact with them. I'm not sure if they had it this year. It's always in September, early September, shortly after Labor Day. It's a great event. There are also many families in Butte that are native families who the NAIA works with, and we've had our ACES chapter collaborating with the local community, tutoring, other opportunities, networking, and working with the, there's about, and Victoria can help me here, I think there's a couple of hundred Native American families in Butte, right close to Butte, go to the public schools here, and our Native students like to work with them. We are sitting in the heart of a Superfund site, which makes for really some great opportunities in terms of restoration and cleanup and understanding the phenomena there. And since similar situations have affected many of the tribal communities, the reservations, this is a great place to learn more about that. You can contact me. I have this generic email address, graduatedean@mtech.edu. It probably gets half a dozen emails a day. The ones that with my name in it, it probably gets 200 a day, and I miss a lot of them because of that. This shows you some of the work that our Sloan students have been doing, and we would love to host you in Butte and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Bev. Now continuing east to Bozeman to introduce Dean Ogilvie. Could say some words.
Thank you, Barbara. So certainly an honor to be here and good to meet you all. My name is Craig Ogilvie. I serve as graduate dean, and I've been here in Bozeman for just over a year now. Montana State University, we are the largest of the three universities represented here. We are a Research One university, but we're really student-centered, and that comes a lot from the leadership of our President Waded Cruzado. Very much student-centered. How can we help our students thrive and succeed? Like many universities, our colleagues, further west of us, we have a broad range of graduate programs spanning across the whole STEM. So from pure mathematics to the range of the natural sciences, to applied sciences and land resource environmental science, plant science, animal science, ecology, and then all the way up to engineering. We have a very large sort of engineering graduate program. And like our two partner universities, we have a range of interdisciplinary programs where you can design your own graduate degree program, both at the PhD level and very soon to be at the master's level. I think the characteristic of the academic side, and then my colleague Professor Sweeney Winchief will talk about the community building side, is not only are you developing the skills and knowledge to make a difference in your communities and in the world and the challenges that are facing our world, but you're also broadening your skills, right? So we're making a big emphasis at Montana State about the professional development, a holistic view of the growth of a graduate student, with a lot of emphasis on supporting you through your writing, your teaching, the development of leadership skills, teamwork, but also career support, helping you build the career that you're most interested in. And part of that certainly comes from the community that is in around the Sloan community here. And for that, I'd like to hand it over to my colleague, Professor Sweeney Winchief.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Had a weird mic check this morning. We good? All right. Hakuna. I just want to welcome everyone. I guess I should say yate to Ranalda and Aaron out there. One of the things I'd like to start off with is a land acknowledgement, and there's been a little bit of some controversy around land acknowledgements and how they've become cliche. And I want to recognize Montana State University as a land grant institution, which is directly related to three federal policies that are connected to the displacement of Indigenous peoples in North America. So with that, I call my colleagues at other land grant institutions to recognize that we have the opportunity to reimagine what that land grant status is and the relationship with Indigenous peoples. Second, I had a friend, he shared with me that the way he sees it, the programs at institutions and the structures and the infrastructure of institutions is like the plumbing. And the students, the faculty, the staff, the administration, the people are the water. So I would like to spend a little bit of time first thanking Dean Ogilvie, who has to remind me time and time again to call him Craig, which I think speaks a lot to the approachability of our faculty, staff, and administration. I appreciate Craig's support from the graduate school. I think that not a lot of student groups get to have the dean of the graduate school show up and hang out with their scholars, and we're one of the lucky ones. So thank you, Craig, for that and for providing a platform. Also, I think Barbara was rather humble in her introduction. She's absolutely focused on supporting our American Indian students in STEM. She could be like that auntie that asks and then maybe emails and then maybe texts. But the important thing is she does so toward student success. She's also been supportive and helped students out through times when life happens, but you still want to graduate. I don't think we have any of our faculty on here, but our faculty have the opportunity to participate in the Indigenous Mentoring Program. Our goal behind the Indigenous Mentoring Program was essentially to provide good mentorship because there seemed to be a disconnect between the culture of STEM and American Indian Alaska Native student realities. So in order to bring them around a little bit, they've participated with students in things like river trips, and they're at our monthly meetings with students, asking questions even of other students when they're presenting in our monthly meetings. So in some cases, they're even traveling back home. I know that that's been the case both at Montana and Montana Tech, where we've had faculty travel home with their students in relationship to the research that they're doing. And then finally, you can't forget our students. Certainly last, but certainly not least, we wouldn't exist without you. You are the co-construction of a community that was not here 5 and 6 years ago. We have successful graduates that have the capacity and ability to take their research back home and present their research to the tribal council, for instance. A lot of communities want to know what happens to their students when they come to our institution. And by being able to go back home and present their research, we're communicating openly that this is what's happening and this is how it's impacting communities. Not in all cases, but some. I would say PWIs typically are not serving American Indians and Alaska Natives in STEM. And these three institutions certainly are through the Sloan Indigenous Graduate Program and through the specific co-construction of community. I think everyone here is familiar with the IMP. I guess if there were actions that I could pass on to anybody that's on here, it's to seek mentorship, both from those who've been where you want to be, but to also near peer mentor or mentor students who are in the same process with you, as well as find mentees to fill your shoes when you leave, which makes for a little more specific but a little more precise recruitment. So we want to know what students are doing to mentor other students as well. With that, I recognize all of the things that happen on campus. We have a large enough Indigenous community on campus that not everybody knows each other. I've been at institutions where all the Native students know each other because there's so few students. And here, there's students all over the place. American Indian students, we have 700 American Indian Alaska Native students with a lot of support systems for them. We're opening a new American Indian Hall in fall of 2021. I've always been a little bit envious that the Payne Native American Center at the University of Montana went up after I left, and I haven't had a chance to enjoy it as much as I would have were I there. But now we have something big coming. With that, I'll hand the time back over to Barbara.
Thank you, Sweetie. And I don't see any questions from the attendees, so I think everybody's eager to hear from our alumni and scholars. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I will hand it over to Dr. Ranalda Tsosie.
Yad Ade da isanat agi do kwaen hilda hanalonigi. She Ranalda Tsosie and Chia. Totla kande nasha do denenshle. I'd like to just take this opportunity to really introduce myself and also talk to you about my journey in terms of graduate school and where I have come, my path to where I'm at today. And I call this educational tzich, meaning mountains. There's so many mountains and things that we climb and we ascend to, and really it's a fight sometimes for Native students. And I think for me, it took me a while, and when I finally started going back to school, it was important for me to overcome some of the barriers and really the challenges that a lot of Native students face. I'm originally from Twitlacon, Arizona, which is Sweetwater, Arizona in English. It's on the northeast side of the Navajo Reservation, and I journeyed all the way up here to Missoula, Montana to complete my educational path. And with that, so some of the questions that were asked of me to answer was really what things really inspired me to pursue graduate school. And part of that is really number one being my community. So my community has been plagued with left with lots of different types of legacies, from uranium mining, vanadium mining, and a number of different things, and coal. And my community specifically is really suffering from the impacts of uranium and vanadium mining. And a byproduct of that is arsenic contamination as well. So for me, when I first started my educational journey, which was when I was a child, my grandmother would often have a bunch of things for me to do at home, and part of that was like herding sheep, and I would often find myself doing other things that were more interesting to me than watching the sheep. And she'd really get after me about that. But little did she know that that curiosity brought me to where I am today, and that is something that I've always kept with me is my grandmother's teachings, all the way through to where I'm at today, and it's still continuing as she's 91 years old, and she'll be 92 next year. And I'm just really very happy, and I take a lot of pride in the fact that I still have my grandmother around. Secondly is my family. My family really were the ones that inspired me to pursue. I have my own family. I have 3 children of my own, and I raised 4 of my brother's children. And so I have a total of 7 children. And then the way I thought about it is I needed someone to look up to when I was growing up. And I knew I always wanted to go to school and get an education. I never envisioned getting a PhD, but and doing the type of research that I was doing, but I know I wanted to get an education. And once I had my children, I knew that it was my responsibility to take on that role as a matriarch in my family, and to get educated and to serve as a role model, as someone that they could look up to, and that I can inspire them to pursue their own aspirations in life, whatever it may be. And part of that also, some of that inspiration really was my own personal yearning to continue on, because I knew from a young age that I wanted to go to school. And I knew back then, when you're younger, you don't really think about how you're just so busy. You grow up on the reservation and you just want to get away. You just want to go off. But then when you get older, you want to go home. You want to go back home, and you want to help your people. So those are some of the reasons why I started this educational journey. In terms of research and discovery for me in my path, it began with these endophytes. They're plates. I did an RU at Diné College one summer. Then it led me to pursue another RU at the University of Arizona, studying nitrogen oxygen compounds. And then when I finished my associate's degree from Dina College, I moved on to the University of New Mexico, where I was in the initiative to maximize student diversity program, which is a program that is a pre-doctoral program for undergraduate students. It gives them, provides them opportunity to work with researchers through a number of different fields. My research was really focused in biomedical, and I studied uranium there at a micro level. But I was more interested in studying uranium at a macro level. So that's when I came to the University of Montana to study uranium. So here, when I started graduate school here, my first desk was this BIA looking desk that you see down here. Metal, hard to move. And I remember being in that office by myself. And for me, my experience for graduate school was unique because I didn't unlike most graduate students, they already knew who they were going to work with. But for me, I didn't know that. I sort of had an idea of what I want. I knew what I wanted to study, but the problem was pairing with the right advisor and the right professor to ensure that I go along that path. But I chose an advisor, eventually chose an advisor. His name is Dr. Edward Rosenberg, who's in the middle of the top photo. He said no to me a number of times because he was on the verge of retiring, but I kept bugging him. And I bugged him, and then finally I said, okay, I need to talk to him and really let him know why I want to study under him. And so I did. And I pled my case, and he finally thought about it and accepted me for to be in his lab. And that's when I started to really explore silica polyamine composites and how I could use these materials to address some of the water contamination issues that my community was facing and suffering from. And it really provided me an opportunity to do things for the first time that I guess regular graduate students wouldn't normally do, is to come in and say, this is what I want to study, and propose it. And instead of having my advisor say, no, you're going to study this, figure out what you want to do in that, under the same discipline. So for me, I thought that a lot of graduate students today are clones of their advisors, and I didn't want to be a clone. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I wanted to study. I knew where I wanted to go. And there's not a problem with that. You just have to go to your main advisor and talk about that. But part of that is finding your own funding. You have to find your own funding to fund that research, which is what I did. And that's how I got started. And today I'm done with that, and I'm starting on my next path. But for me, in terms of seeking a community, I had a hard time when I first came to the University of Montana because I was far from home. I was more 1,100 miles away from home. I wanted to be able to have a sense of family. So I reached out to my fellow Sloan scholars. I reached out to the Native community in Missoula, and I really got to know people, and those people, individuals, and the Sloan community became my family up here. So it's my family away from home. And really, I wanted to be able to do something that meant a lot, and that as far as research. And I was asked talk about the Sloan program and what it meant to me. To me, is they're my family. They supported me through we just bounce ideas off each other. We would have each other read like abstracts or just help each other through tough times. And I really had really gained a brother who's Moses down here. Also a sister who's Carrie. She's not here at U of M, but she's in Arizona. And through the not only the UM Sloan program, but through the extended Sloan program, I have so many science brothers and sisters that it's just crazy the amount of people that I really got to know and to network with and to be able to have contacts with. If I have a certain research question or science question that I'm not familiar with, I have a network that I can reach out to that is really, I think, is so valuable for me as an Indigenous scientist, is that you have other Indigenous scientists that you can reach out to and you're able to collaborate and talk it out. But one of my favorite most memories about being in graduate school is this picture here, which is of the police in the background. And so we had a fire in our lab, and then this was followed by me dropping a bottle of, I can't remember exactly what it was, but a huge bottle of ether. And I was like, I just tried to do what I could, and I was like, okay, I can't handle this. So I went away and I just called people, and then I walked outside, and then I was like, then I started hearing sirens, and I was like, please don't be that, please don't come this way, please. Sure enough, they were here for all because it was a Rosenberg lab mistake again. So, and it's just one of the funniest things that I think that I got to experience is really having a lab emergency and a couple of those, and just really living to talk about it, and thinking about now how funny that is, even though my advisor was pretty mad about it, but it's still funny. But I really got to have build this sense of family with all of my colleagues. And to me, my husband always tells me that you're going to save the world, Reg. Always says that to me. So my sign was what's next after my PhD is I want to save the world. And for me, that's the world, meaning my home community. I want to bring home the solution, the point of use filter that it's currently a prototype, but I'm trying to do the next step, and I want to be able to use some of those technologies to go and to address these water contamination issues that I'm facing, that are my home community is facing, and hopefully it could be applied to other communities like Flint and like in South Africa where they're suffering from uranium. So I really believe that the prototype that I worked on is something that could be very beneficial to humans. And that's all I have. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ranalda. We know you're already on the way to save the world. We know that. And I don't see any questions typed in for Ranalda, but keep them coming. Hopefully we could save a little time at the end for questions. But if you could, stop sharing, Ranalda, and then we'll, I think, move on to Shanara, Shani, who's also a woman on the move because she's on the road right now and stopped at a coffee shop to be able to participate enthusiastically in our webinar today. So thank you, Shani, and feel free when you're ready to share your screen.
Found it. Found the unmute button. Hevawana, Heva Shani Spang-Gion, Nahashave. Good evening. My name's Shani, and I am joining you from Miles City, about an hour away from what I'm calling home right now, which is Baker, Montana. We're roughly 10 miles from the North Dakota border. I'm really, really grateful to have this opportunity to not only listen to all of the institutions kind of summarize what they can offer. I know it's been some years since I've been at Montana Tech, and really it's a privilege and an honor to hear from the institutions and the students. And Ranalda, I really enjoyed your presentation, and just made me smile at some of your stories, and just really, really a great, powerful journey you have. I'd like to share with you a little bit about my academic journey, specifically in graduate school, and what got me to that point. And I guess before I get started, Barbara, Aaron, I can see you guys right now. If you would just do this, if it gets too loud, I'll try to talk a little louder. But thank you again, and with that, I'll get started. If I can change my slide. Let's see, here we go. So this was kind of adapted from my self-location statement that Dr. Winchie introduced to me. It's just a way of orienting myself to you as the audience. I have my story through pictures today, through all my slides, and this just represents my family. You can see a lot of my sisters, a couple of my grandmas, the tribes I belong to, my kids who are on horseback, and it just brings me great joy to see them outside and enjoying the outdoors. And I also have my work family in the bottom right corner, who were really helpful and encouraging when I was first thinking about entering graduate school. They were all very supportive, and my tribe, even I was working for my tribe at the time, and I left for graduate school at Montana Tech. And my tribe allowed me what you'd call it, I guess, kind of an absence or a sabbatical for a year, to go to Montana Tech for all of my graduate courses. I tried to cram them into 3 semesters. It was a little intense, but got it done. And they were nothing but supportive. And I think that's so crucial when you have those different kinds of support around you, not only family, but your work family, and then building those relationships in academia, like Ranalda mentioned, having kind of that academic family that also Sweeney introduced me to. So my inspiration for, I guess, research in general, that passion started at a young age. If you look at the picture on the right, Linwood Tauble is presenting to a group of youth back home. Linwood Tauble is one of our ethnobotany experts. He's our plant knowledge holder, and he makes no qualms about sharing knowledge whenever, wherever, with youth and with people who want to learn. And that was really pivotal for me. That was something that really changed my mind about how we can share our traditional knowledges. It doesn't always have to be super controlled or follow any super strict protocol. He just shared and said, we all have to learn this. And so him and his dad, I was 12 years old when I got to go on an ethnobotany camp with his dad. And while his dad's no longer with us, that experience alone really inspired my research interest. He had us not only learn the stories and protocols and things for picking plants, but he also had us take notes, had us take very detailed notes, and had us also write down the scientific name of these plants. And that notebook was ours to keep beyond the camp. And he always reminded us and said, your notes are what you're going to rely on, not only what you listen to and absorb, but those notes are going to serve you down the road. So that kind of really was kind of an introduction for me to science outside, and that got me really excited. And to the left, you see part of my inspiration comes from my ancestors. On the left is Chief Don Life. He was a Cheyenne chief and helped lead our people back from Oklahoma. So we're able to call home what is now present-day Montana. On the right side is Pretty Shield. She's an ancestor on my Crow side, and she was a medicine woman, and she raised many, many, many of her granddaughters, including my grandma. And so just the stories coming down from her and those lessons I carry with me, and they inspire me to look at the world in different ways, including using Western science. And the bottom picture is just a photo of Rosebud Creek. It's one of 2 primary watersheds that run through Northern Cheyenne and was actually a site location for my graduate research. So my academic journey began with my sister, my younger sister, encouraging me to apply to Graduate Horizons. And that was in 2014. So I went. It was at Cornell University. And as it happens, that's where I met both Dr. Hartline and Dr. Winchie. And Bev was amazing at talking with me about science and saying, you're absolutely, if you're interested in a water project, which my background working for my tribe had been 10 years in water resources in different capacities, she said, we can make it happen. And I wasn't sold. I was actually in the kind of policy group, the public policy group, talking to admissions officers from Harvard and different places about public policy in government and public service. But she swayed me, and that was the summer of 2014, and I did a tour at Montana Tech that fall and was able to turn around an application for review to start courses in January of 2015. And below that, you'll see the Tongue River watershed. My time with the tribe, we spent a ton of time protecting this watershed from off-reservation mineral development, including coal bed methane that produces a lot of very saline water with it. And that saline water at times didn't require any treatment. So it was getting into our waterways and affecting our aquatic life. So we fought very hard. We were both on the ground in the field, doing our own measurements, discharge measurements, water quality measurements, but also fighting in the courts. And a lot of our data helped inform that. So my research, I just wanted to generally kind of cover. Again, I am Northern Cheyenne Crow, but my research focused on Northern Cheyenne, specifically the portion of the Rosebud Creek watershed that transected and crossed into our political boundaries. I wanted to understand the groundwater surface water interaction of that water, and I used stable isotopes of hydrogen and oxygen to kind of tell that story and try to understand where that creek was gaining water and when it was losing water and when. And there were some seasonal changes, but there were also some changes in the water quality that we couldn't definitively explain. We were trying to think of other ways to address that, and unfortunately, that's probably a PhD level project. But the other side of my research, what was really important to me was bringing our tribe's own traditional knowledge to the table and having it as a counterpart or kind of in alignment and synthesis with Western science and how we looked at and viewed water, how we treated it, how these knowledges affect our relationship with water and other natural systems was really important to me to look at and consider, especially because at the time, our water policy on Northern Cheyenne was very much within the federal government framework. So whatever the federal government wanted us to see with water, whether that's through the Clean Water Act or other acts where we were able to get grant funding to fund our work outside. So we didn't really have something that reflected our traditional knowledge, even if it was just in a policy, for instance, a water code or our constitution or our water quality standards. It was sort of alluded to and kind of assumed that that was the framework, but there was really no explicit way that we were stating that to these federal agencies, as well as actively practicing it in everyday field work. So that was very important. I wanted to figure out how we could do that for our tribe. So talking the Sloan program, I think the Sloan program means a lot of different things to me. I thought it was especially powerful on my first visit to Montana Tech that I met with 2 Sloan scholars, and they shared everything. I mean, not just the academic rigor of Tech, but also what their experiences were as Native students at Tech, as parents, as graduate research assistants. And that was really, that meant a lot to me to say, okay, I can see myself here on this campus, even after being out of school for 10 years. It gave me a little bit of that confidence to be able to see myself re-entering a program after being out of school so long. The other thing is I was really grateful for the opportunity to meet other Sloan scholars and really hear about their research as well. And that relationship you build with people within Sloan, but also outside of Sloan, I thought they're continuing to be really powerful relationships for me. I consider, Sammy Matsaw a really good friend. We call each other our academic brother and sister. And just some others I've met from University of Arizona. And some of them are even professors now. And it's really powerful and amazing to see what the Sloan network can offer and how it can even help you expand your thinking about Western science and what you might be able to do. So Sloan has been really, really good to me just on a practical level as well. Like I said, I kind of did a very, very intense course load at Tech because part of my family stayed home, and my daughter came with me to Butte. And having those obligations, I guess, of trying to sustain 2 households across like a 5-6 hour stretch in Montana, and being able to drive home, none of that would have been possible, I don't think, or would have been super difficult without the support of Sloan and the folks who are behind Sloan, but also with that financial support meant all the world to me and was able to make my graduate program possible. I feel like I've flown through my presentation, but if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Shani. I'll let you stop sharing. Great, thank you. And I don't see any typed in questions. I think I'd rather move on to our last presenter. Again, I am recording, so if you we're running a little bit late, but I could share the recording if you need to step off, but hopefully you can stay with us. And I will also open it up to the audio to ask questions at the end if you're on a phone and can't type in anything into the chat. So Mariah, if you could share your presentation, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Okay. So, hi everyone. My name is Mariah Romero. I'm a third-year PhD student at Montana State University. And before I begin, I would like to acknowledge and thank the institutions that are listed at the bottom of the slide. I just would not be where I am right now in my academic career if it was not for the support, financial, and from like the department and faculty members of these institutions and organizations. So for those of you who don't know, my hometown is Tucson, Arizona, famous for its Tucson Gem and Mineral Show. At a very young age, I grew up playing outside a lot with my siblings and my cousins. And occasionally my mom would take us to the Gem and Mineral Show whenever it came into town. So at a young age, I was curious about the rocks around me, the mountains around me. And it wasn't until I was about 12 years old, my mom showed us Dante's Peak, and that's where my passion really ignited for earth sciences, volcano processes. I wanted to be like Pierce Brosnan, studying volcanoes, being at the site, collecting data at the field area. And so I pursued an undergraduate degree in geosciences at the University of Arizona. And through that pathway, that's where I got really involved with undergraduate research. And that's what really inspired me to go into graduate school. So I started to move away from becoming a volcanologist and go down the path of a sedimentologist, geochronologist. As an undergrad, I did field work in southwestern Montana. I worked in a laboratory. I presented research on the samples that I had analyzed, and I presented this research at national conferences, one international conference. As a senior, I was a research assistant with working at the Arizona Lasercron facility there. And I wanted more responsibility. I wanted to work more with the instrumentation. I wanted to understand more about the rocks and the project that I had been contributing on. And so some of these figures right here, the far bottom left, that was during fieldwork in Montana with the Keck group. This second photo on the right, that is the Arizona Lasercron Center. That's the mass spec right there. And here I am at University of Arizona presenting research. And all of those combinations of field work, lab work, discussing science, working with lab instruments, that's what really motivated me to continue my education, continue to ask questions. And so I applied to the master's program at Purdue University, and I wanted to get a master's in geology. And through there, I was able to earn my master's, and having worked with Ken Ridgway, I wanted to continue my education in a PhD in earth sciences at Montana State University. And while I was searching for a mentor, I also wanted to keep in mind that I'd want to work with somebody that had similar interests in addressing the geologic problems that I'm interested in answering and shedding light on. I also wanted to work with a mentor that has interest in similar analysis methods, such as geochronology, thermochronology, I have a background in, but I also wanted to learn a new dating technique, such as uranium, thorium, helium thermochronology. And this left photo right here, those of you who are part of our Sloan meeting last week, this should look very familiar. And what I want to emphasize here is that this region right here is part of the basin that I want to focus on. But within this basin, we can get an idea of where sediment was coming from, such as the source, what was the thermal history of the basin, what is the underlying rocks beneath the basin. So these are things that I wanted to continue to learn and understand. And so at MSU, I was able to reach out to Dr. Devin Orm, and we started talking about a research project, and I applied to MSU, got in, became part of the Sloan community. And since then, my PhD research involves looking at the basal stratigraphy of the Great Valley Fork Basin, trying to understand the thermal history, and also trying to look at the underlying rocks beneath that basin. Now that I'm a third year, I'm starting to think more about what career paths would I like to follow or go down as I start to try to wrap up my PhD. But I could go into academia, such as teaching at a university. I could work for the USGS, work with forestry. I could, become a consultant for hydrogeology or some sort of hydrogeologic company, or even work with NASA. So right now I'm thinking of applying for a postdoc position sometime next fall. That would allow for me to merge my geologic background with the planetary science project, and this could potentially open up pathways for me to work with NASA scientists. And these images on the bottom are just photos taken from Mars. But since I've completed my master's program at Purdue and started the PhD program at Montana State, what SIGP means to me is first and foremost family. I cannot emphasize that enough. I've met one of my best friends, Ray Allen, through Sloan. And we have our monthly meetings, which is awesome for us to connect, especially during these tough times with COVID. But also at these meetings, we can reconnect with each other. Some individuals are not able to make it to every meeting because they have work or family that they need to tend to. But once they come to the next meeting, we reconnect instantly like cousins. Like, I can't emphasize that enough, that those family members that you rarely see, but once you see them, things pick up right where they left off. I definitely feel that with the Sloan community. I can relate to many of the Sloan scholars throughout, being at Purdue and MSU. We have discussed our struggles of leaving our homes and communities, and it's hard, especially going from Tucson, Arizona to Indiana, and then from Indiana to southwestern Montana. So I'm doing all of this jumping across the country, but connecting and relating to those other Sloan scholars, it's really helped me navigate through graduate school. The advice, support, and encouragement from the Sloan community has helped me with adjusting to each new setting. I've definitely gained a sense of belonging, especially with Barbara being our auntie. She texted me like literally 30 seconds as I was logging on. So I really appreciate the support and the love that I feel from this community. We also help each other throughout our program. Last spring, we started a writing group, and that was really great. Stephanie Ann and I, we were able to really help each other with working on our qualifying exams for our PhD programs. She does research in biochemistry, I believe. And so I was able to learn about her research project, and she was able to learn about mine. But we were also able to strengthen each other's writing and support each other through that writing process. And so that's something that means a lot to me ever since I've been at MSU. And these photos on the bottom from the Indigenous Knowledge Field Camp, these three right here. Stephanie Ann was on that, Josh was on that. I feel like we got a great bond as soon as we came back from the field trip, and every time we saw each other at our monthly meetings, where we just instantly got together and just started chatting again. So it was really nice to break that ice, get to know each other's backgrounds too, what led us to MSU. This photo on the right are the graduating students that were part of that graduated in May 2018. And so each of them too, we're all still good friends on Facebook and Instagram. And one thing that I would recommend to students who would want to explore a graduate program in the STEM field in Montana is that we have a solid research institution. We're an R1, but also the community, the Sloan community there has definitely strengthened within the last few years that I've been there. And graduate school it's challenging, it's tough, it's incredibly tough. But when you have a good group of talented and strong individuals that you get to see on a monthly basis, and they genuinely ask you, how are you doing? Like, that really gets you through all of the obstacles. And so that's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mariah. And, I think more and more we're seeing that because we have our National Sloan program, that we could have students that maybe do a master's at one Sloan institution and then they transfer to another institution. And it's just kind of building those networking and those connections. And Mariah is, one of our scholars who's been both a Sloan Scholar at Purdue and at Montana State. So thank you for Mariah. If you could maybe stop sharing. And I'm going to share the last slide, which see, just has kind of a thank you to everybody, and then that tiny URL that I've been posting into the chat if you haven't seen that. Again, I'd like to thank Ranalda, Shan, and Mariah for sharing today. And we have, those of you that stayed on and you have questions, I'd love to have you either or introduce yourself if you wish, or ask a question. And if you haven't already connected with me or somebody at Montana Tech or U of M, if you could fill out this form so that we can make sure that we are in touch with you and can connect you to faculty mentors that you might want to get in touch with.